You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its mission is to go out and dissect, discuss classic horror movies, both old and new, and get into the guts and the nitty gritty of these films that we grew up loving and adoring, and see where they stand today. Before we talk about, or before I mention today's subject, I should introduce myself. My name is Paul Farrell. I'm the lead host of the podcast, but I'm joined today by my fellow podcaster, Nick Alford. Hey, Nick, welcome aboard.
Cheers, Paul. Good to be here, mate, as always.
Yeah, likewise. It feels like it's been a while since the two of us have been able to hang out and have a good chat over the horror movies that we love.
It has, mate, and this is a favourite of mine, so looking forward to it.
Exactly. It's a great segue because what we are going to talk about is the Monster Squad. And it's one of those films. It came out in like 1987. Look, I'm going to have to open up straight away and confess that I only watched this movie for the first time, I think, like early last year, which is really quite. Yeah, I know. Boo away. It's quite criminal, really, that I got to that stage, and it's particularly like where people that aren't familiar with the film, like it does follow up, like basically the classic Universal monsters are awakened in the 1980s. Obviously, then was present day setting to kind of wreak havoc, and the only people out there are the Monster Squad who can stop them, who basically are a bunch of misfit kids. But wait,
the best quote is in the trailer for the movie. The best quote is, "You know who you're going to call if you have a ghost. Who do you call if you have a monster?" Dun dun dun. That's nice. The actual original trailer.
Really? Are they? Yeah. Were they trying to rip off or rip themselves off Ghostbusters with that, or?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, completely. So yeah, look, it's a strange one that, as I said, that only just kind of came onto my radar. As I said, no, that's wrong. I should start again. I was aware of it. It's one of those films where you keep meaning to watch it, and you just, it's on that list, and you just never seem to get around to watching it, which is criminal. But yeah, thankfully I did watch it, and I'm all the more better for having done so, because it's an awesome film. But you come from a very, very different background with it, though, Nick. Tell us how and when or where you were when you first discovered Monster Squad.
I remember it coming out. I mean, bearing in mind this was 87, so I was 7 when it was released in the cinema, so I was too young to go. But I remember when it came out in the video shop, and I guess back then it took a lot longer for things to come onto videos.
Yes.
Maybe a year or 2 years, roughly, I think.
Yeah.
So let's say I was about 9.
Sure.
And I remember going to the video shop and actually getting the poster, because back in the day, kids, when you had video shops, you could, if you were nice, you went and asked the guy who ran the video shop and said, "Look, please, mister, can I have any posters you're using, not using?" And usually I'd end up with some really random ones, and occasionally I'd ask for a special one if I knew it was coming out. So yeah, managed to get that, and even just the cover. It was back when not just a normal VHS size, which is probably slightly bigger than your PS4 games now. It was like a monster, unintentional pun. It was actually like a massive sort of size video, and ended up buying one later on when they were selling them off. But yeah, as a kid, I was obviously too young to sort of rent it. So
yes,
like most of my early horror movies, it was my mate's older brother.
Yes,
thank you, Matt. Who would often rent it, and then we'd get to watch it, secretly when no one was watching. We had sleepover. But yeah, to the point where me and my mates would watch it, and we'd obviously seen the Goonies enough, a couple of years before, to fall in love with those sort of. It's like, you can relate to it. You're watching with your mates, and you can see yourself on screen almost.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying there. Yeah.
Which is obviously for any young kid to see yourself at that age, is just amazing. Going, oh wow, they're going around and they're, they're shooting things, blowing things up, and battling monsters. It's a dream come true to the point where it's sad, but I'll happily admit that I even formed my own little monster squad with my mates and made little badges and membership cards. And
man,
yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, not purely for your own embarrassment's sake, but but I identify that in a massive way, because for me, my movie was Ghostbusters, and I did the same thing with Ghostbusters. I kind of had the old kind of rucksack bags and made them into proton packs, and with like bits of like tube and vacuum cleaners stuck on the end of it. Yeah, the whole works. But yeah, totally get it. Like living and dreaming, like these films that you could really feel like you're a part of. But I guess like with Monster Squad, it's a bit more so because these are kids that are in this kind of face themselves in this kind of dilemma, and so that helps transport the viewer or the kids to kind of feel like they are one of them, that they are one of the Monster Squad, and identify with them in that way.
Yeah. What sort of sucked for me was I thought, oh great, my boys are like my kids are like 10 and 8 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe they're similar sort of age when I first saw it. Maybe they're all right for it.
Yeah.
And I turned it on, and I don't know if anyone's watched the movie recently, but the opening first, say, 5-10 minutes establishing it are pretty brutal. They're like, vampires just ripping people up, and it's like a more graphic Universal horror movie.
Yes.
And so I think what I might do, that they weren't into it at all. They're like, no.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, but I think I'll I think I might just skip that part and start again.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Well, look, I should probably also add at this point too. At the moment, our friends at MonsterFest are doing a travelling sideshow to Sydney, and that's happening kind of next weekend at the time of this record. So I'm hoping to get this kind of knocked together in time. But they are screening the Monster Squad on Saturday, March 10th at 2:30 p.m. So if you've not seen it, definitely go and check it out. Maybe put a little pause on the podcast discussion for the moment, because we will kind of talk about bits and pieces through that, and come back and have a listen to us. Otherwise, like if you have seen it before and you kind of want to listen to us, do. But if you want to relive it, and see it on the big screen where it deserves to be seen, then go down there and check it out, because it's one of those real kind of much loved films. And it got Nick. Go on, sorry, Nick.
Paul. And that's what's good for me about MonsterFest and that whole sort of things, that they're bringing back all the old movies that I used to love but could never see in the cinema because I was too young.
Yes.
So, I'd have to either watch a dodgy copy or an old VHS, and or even worse, watch it on TV. Because the thing is, I realise now, going back and watching some movies with my kids, that they cut out a lot of the movies on TV. So when you watch it in its rawest form, it's a different movie altogether.
Yeah. It's the whole kind of dubbing stuff as well. Like, the whole the whole fuck you becoming forget you, and
forget you, yeah.
All that stuff that you kind of go, when you rewatch, you go, oh my god. Awesome stuff. Yeah, so it is really cool that the guys at MonsterFest are able to do that. So yeah, highly recommend people go check it out, even if you have seen it before, to see it on the big screen. But it also got Nick and I kind of having a chat offline, and we just said we so need to do a podcast on this, and what better way to kind of look at it than kind of saying, almost like I guess, put together a list, isn't it, that we kind of thought the top, here are 5 reasons why Monster Squad is a much watched classic horror film that you need to go and see. And so I think that's kind of what this is going to be, for the listeners out there, this is going to be kind of our guiding kind of plot through the podcast episode. And I think what we're going to start with, and this is a deliberate hook, to kind of maybe kind of snag some of the, I guess, the millennials out there who may not have even ever heard of the Monster Squad. But point 1, I'm going to call it the original Stranger Things. And And there is a reason to that, but I might just throw that to you for a second, Nick, because when I was talking about this offline, you were telling me a story about that when the Stranger Things first came out.
Yeah, when Stranger first came out, it obviously got loads of comparisons, and which is fair enough because a lot of it's like a direct homage, and I think the Duffer Brothers aren't ashamed of that, and they're not apologising for it, and they're not denying it. But for me, one of the movies that it stands out that I felt it was similar to was Monster Squad because of, I mean, I guess even more so season 2 because of the team up. And there's an older kid who's the cooler kid, similar to
Rudy,
the character in the leather jacket, the one who can smoke.
Yeah, the Rudy character,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, I think season 2 is definitely more of a homage to Monster Squad.
Yeah, that's right. And so, it's interesting because, I am not aware of the fact that you had already had that comparison, had that conversation with other people. It was one of the first things that struck me when I was coming together of why it is a must-watch classic today. And I think people can relate to it from that, coming from Stranger Things. I mean, obviously, it's going to have a lot more of a dated look and feel to it because it's definitely born of the 1980s, like late 1980s. And so, but for me, it's that whole kind of, it really taps into that kind of whole kind of kids kind of camaraderie that we got through. Like that for me, when I watched it, and I've said this to you offline, is I got that instant comparison to the Goonies.
Yeah.
In that sense that it's got, it's a band of kids that kind of have to team together or work together against the odds against a common enemy. Obviously, Monster Squad goes down a darker route, whereas the Goonies is very much more of an adventure film.
They're both trying to save the town as well. In that respect.
Yes, that's right.
The town / the world in Monster Squad, and the Goonies more, their individual houses, I guess. But you're right. They're all banding together, and I think that's what makes it work, though, because it's got that heart to it.
Yeah, agreed. And even throw in this is one of the things. So for good or ill, people have either loved or hated the more recent Stephen King's It film that came out last year. But for me, the one thing it got right was that element. The kids in it were amazing, and the way that they kind of connected with one another was really kind of heartfelt. So even when you look at the Sean character and Patrick. And their relationship together, and how strong that is, and the way that they riff off each stuff. They do the whole kind of I know I am, but what are you? Which was so classic 80s at the time, kind of way of cussing people, cussing your best friend down. But that kind of that energy that's in there between those two characters is there right the way through the film, and I think that helps resonate on the screen.
And that's what makes it feels so realistic as well, because way before South Park, these kids were swearing, and do you know what? That's how kids that age actually talk to each other when they're not around their parents. They do swear, and and that's what again it touches on so well, and watching that around a similar sort of age, I guess.
Yes,
it felt more like a more realistic portrayal. Like you do, have a go at your mates because you can, and that's the only way that good mates really do talk to each other. The kids swearing, way before South Park, as you said, is a great kind of we were saying offline, just the whole kind of Wolf dork. Does Wolfman have a dork? He just wears pants, of course. It's this kind of the way they kind of play off that, the way kids would talk, and it's just a great. It's another way of inviting you into this world, I guess. And it's discussions you'd actually have as well, can you kill a wolfman with anything other than a silver bullet? Like if you chopped off his head, or other ways, you remember the law and other ways around it, and having those sort of discussions. The same way people talk about Marvel characters today. Could the Hulk really kill Thor?
Yes,
and they have that sort of discussion. Whereas, we would do that with monsters.
Yeah, that's right. No, and it is a good point, and I love that scene actually that you were just referring to in the treehouse where they're testing Rudy on his monster trivia.
Yeah.
And they said about what can kill a wolf man, and he says the silver bullet. And they say what two things kill a wolf man. He says the silver bullet, and they say what else? He goes, well, I don't know what else. And he asked them that question. They don't know the answer. Which I think it's just great. So good, such a cool moment. But you're right. There's a lot of kind of good energy and a good working, and I think that's also a testament to the script writing, which is a good way for me to kind of quickly mention that this is the people behind this was Black and Decker. That's obviously Shane Black and Fred Decker.
Yeah.
Shane Black probably more known still today because he's the guy behind he starred in the original Predator alongside Arnie, but he's actually directing the recent or yet to be released new version of the Predator film coming out midway through this year. But he's also the guy behind Lethal Weapon and The Nice Guys and Iron Man 3, just to bring Marvel back into it, and things like that. So he's got a definite tone and energy to the way he writes, a more adult example of it, or a great example of an adult version, I think, of the kind of dialogue. I mean, Lethal Weapon's in there too, but I feel personally leans more towards Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which came out in 2005. There is this kind of, I don't know if have you ever seen that one, Nick?
I have, and I didn't really get into it. I tried, but I don't know, I didn't really find any characters likable.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Val Kilmer wasn't doing it for me, and definitely not my favourite Black film. Definitely not.
No, it's not. No, I get that too, and I guess that kind of puts a bit of a dampener on my point. But the dialogue, I think, I do agree with you. By the way, it's not. If you're looking at the film as a whole, it's not a fantastic film. But I really like the dialogue interplay that was in that, in particular between Robert Downey and Val Kilmer, and even Michelle Monaghan as well, in the way that she is bantering with the three of them, and the way they kind of interact with each other. And arguably the characters aren't that likable, but I just like the dialogue that was being used within it. And speaking of Val Kilmer, have you seen The Snowman recently? The Michael Fassbender film.
No, I haven't heard good things.
He's in that, and he's really unrecognizable. My wife and I watched it, and we're just like, is that Val Kilmer? It looks like him, but he's had a lot of work done.
That's sad.
Yeah, unfortunate. But he's still really good in it. His character's really good, but you just couldn't help be kind of transfixed by his face. But let's talk about the other side of the coin. So the director, Fred Decker, he hasn't really done a lot in the directing circles, has he? The year before that Monster Squad came out, he did Night of the Creeps.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he did an episode of Tales from the Crypt before then doing RoboCop 3, and that's kind of it to his directing credits.
That was Flying RoboCop, wasn't it?
Yes, that was Flying RoboCop.
Wow, they gave him wings. Nice one.
Yeah. Although he is, I should mention that he is also co-writing The Predator as well.
Oh, okay.
With Shane Black, so that's kind of interesting. That might kind of give you a hint as to where that's going. He also wrote the script for House as well, the film in 1985.
Yeah. I think I'm excited to see anything Shane Black does, though, just because, seeing the two of them together will be great. It'll probably feel like a 1980s movie.
Yeah.
But the sort of banter he does, and just the writing, so it just feels organic and natural, and
yes, agreed.
Often brutal. And to hear kids talk like that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's what helps with the Strange Things comparison as well, because
yes,
it is, it was back in a day when you could actually ride your BMX around, and get so uptight, and it's nice to be nostalgic watching it too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I agree. And so, like, I guess I'm going to raise the next point here. That the reason why it's a must-watch classic is actually, and it's similar to what we were talking about here. Is the comedy that's at hand is here is 80s comedy horror through and through, and like it's something that we were saying again offline about this. It's something that during the 80s they were just churning these things out. It wasn't necessarily horror either. It was like, you throw in any kind of Corey Feldman, teen kind of flick, or cross that with John Hughes's work, of the time. There was a definite kind of energy with the comedy elements that were at play at the time that doesn't seem to be able to get captured today. I don't know. Would you agree with me? Or
definitely. I mean, I've seen people emulate it. Like I recently watched Crazy Heads on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
and it looked like it. The first sort of opening 5 minutes, I'm like, great. This looks like it's going to be fun, kind of like a Misfits Channel 4 sort of show.
Sure.
And it quickly sort of slips into like an episode of Hollyoaks or Saved by the Bell.
Wow.
Yeah. So I watched the whole thing hoping it would change, but no, it's pretty average. And it's people trying to tap into that again, that kind of, I don't know, that edgy nostalgia, which is hard to do.
It is hard to do, isn't it? That's the thing, like, because like I think the reason why it's hard, and this is coming from somebody that does write, is that so much of it is in your own head, and to try and a lot of it was lightning in the bottle stuff as well. And that's the reason why we were attached to it when we were kids or when we were younger, to try and kind of repeat that or reflect that or redo these things again or try and keep these things in the same kind of tone can easily fall foul.
And you're not just comparing it to one movie that's released the same year. You're comparing it to a movie you saw years ago.
Yeah,
you have really fond memories at a certain time. All these rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia layered on top of it. To compare it to something that's new, I mean, that's an uphill battle straight away.
Yeah, 100%. So it is. I mean, and so for me, I don't know whether it'll be interesting to see people of a different generation and their take on this movie, because because I think for us, it and that's when I was, even though as I said I only watched it last year for the first time. I was instantly transported to that time, and all these memories of things that I grew up with, kind of reawakened within my my recesses of my mind, and it was a real pleasurable experience because of that. And that's something that I, really, and I watched it again recently for the record, and I liked it even more. Like, for second viewing of it, it's like, this is a really, really nicely put together film, and you really kind of relate to the characters in it. You're fighting the fight with them. Yes, and also, I really, really kind of appreciate it. So I think that's, as I said, I'd be interested to see people's take on it, who may not have grown up in the 80s.
I mean, you're a fan of, you're a Universal monster aficionado, I'd say. I don't know if you'd refer to yourself as that, but
you know what? Like, it's weird. Like, I often reflect on it, and I thank you, because I do have a strong passion for that time, and the films that were created in, like, we're talking like the 1930s, 1940s time frame.
Not Tom Cruise.
Not Tom Cruise
in The Mummy.
Oh. Let's not go there. But yeah, like, it's that was such a disappointing film. I really wanted that to be a good film. But yeah, look, it's I remember going to a fancy dress party when I was like 6, and could be anybody, like people were going as Spider-Man or Superman, which was like the thing at the time. And I said, no, I want to go as Dracula. And my mum was like, okay, it's not Halloween, but I was like, no, I want to be Dracula. I want to go as Dracula. So I just already at that kind of young age, just kind of really was drawn to like the the dark side of the cinema screen. And so I love that stuff, like Bela Lugosi, you know, as Dracula, and then you know, later years with Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman. Like, to me, there's still not been anyone who has emulated the Wolfman on screen since Lon Chaney Jr.
I was worried there that, you know, being someone who doesn't have the nostalgic vibe that I obviously have,
Yeah,
watching it, you know, as an adult, and some, you know, this obviously references something you're very fond of, you might be quite dismissive of it, saying, well, look, this is a comedy horror, why is it, you know, or did you take it at face value?
I think I took it as face value, really, because I knew I was coming into it. Like, you know, as I said, it wasn't that it wasn't on my radar either. That's the thing. I wasn't coming into watching the Monster Squad cold. I was aware of what it was, and I do remember it growing up, but I just never had watched it. But yeah, like for me, it was almost like, yeah, I'd love to see these people kind of interact with each other, and that was the thing that I really got. That was the kick I got out of it. I really liked the way that they really played to the strengths of the characters from the Universal era, and what I mean by that is Dracula has always been the personification of evil. Yeah. His character, and so he is the darker character within the movie. He's the ringleader, and he's got his two lackeys there, which is the Mummy and Gillman, who people might know more from Creature from the Black Lagoon, or if you're a millennial, The Shape of Water. This is a massive kind of riff off that, and a salute to that as well, of that era. And so they to me are lackeys in the film. They don't really serve much more. They don't really talk. They grunt and they kind of, you know, do their thing. Yeah, they are, but they're there. They're basically there to serve as the menace of the thing. And the comedy comes from the Mummy, you know, when, you know, with the bow and arrow scene as well. I love that bit. But it's but for me, I really I loved the Wolfman's character, and I also love Frankenstein's monster's character, as well. And the reason for that, and what they really played on well, was so I'll start with Frankenstein's monster, because he is, if you read the books or if you kind of have watched any of their films that are accurate to Mary Shelley's work, he isn't necessarily the monster. Frankenstein's the monster. The monster is his creation. But ironically is the heart of the book or film. He's the one that wants to have companion. He wants to connect with humanity, but he's deemed as ugly and an outsider. And every time he tries to get close to somebody that he is affectionate towards, because of his brute strength, he kills them and mishandles them. And like, there's a great scene from the original Frankenstein film, James Whale film, 1931. That's not right. Is it 1931? 1932. The original James Whale film, Frankenstein, where he sits down. The monster sits down next to the riverside where there's a little girl playing with a doll, and she's and there's these flowers, and she and a butterfly, and she's saying it's pretty, and he wants to hold it, and he thinks she's pretty, picks her up and basically crushes her to death accidentally, because he just wants to be close to the thing he loves, and because he thinks she's pretty. But there's a very, very subtle nod to that in the Monster Squad, and I know I'm going a bit kind of, you know, freak kind of fanboy for the moment, but there's a really, really cool nod in the Monster Squad where there's a similar scene where Sean's sister's character, and I've forgotten her name, but she's also sitting by the waterside, and Frankenstein's monster comes up towards her. And at that point, you don't know if he's a menace or not. You don't know if he's friendly, and he turns out to be a friend. Yeah. But I thought that was really, really good, because I thought that not only did they nod to or play with imagery that was recognizable from the classics, but it also was a great way to kind of show the true heart of Frankenstein's monster, that he wasn't all evil. And lastly is the Wolfman character, because he's very, very similar in the sense that he's somebody who's basically been given a curse that he will turn into a wolf. Yeah. But he's actually a genuinely kind of strong, good-natured character. He's kind of like the way Lon Chaney Jr. played him, he's a bit like the all-American kind of hero in the sense that, he's doomed and, but he still tries to do good. But unfortunately, he turns into this freak of nature, and he can't control that. And I love the way they played on that in Monster Squad 2, where he's like, "I'm a werewolf. You got to kill me now."
Yeah, lock me up. Like the police, and says, similar to the way they do in American Werewolf in London. It's like, lock me up, I'll kill people.
Exactly, and that's what I thought. It played it so right, and there's elements of Monster Squad coming from that point of view. As I said, and as you quite rightly pointed out, as being a bit of a guru or on the Universal Monsters, I thought there was some stuff they did in that which was just no perfect, and that's what pulled me even more. And makes me realize or wish I had seen it when I was a lot younger, so I could have tapped into that, plus also tapped into what you said about how it just invoked all these emotions and connected with the kids. It's a great. I love that, all that stuff, and playing with that stuff. And let's face it, like for me, the classic Universal horror films were killed when Abbott and Costello came on board.
Oh, don't say that.
No, they.
As a kid.
Oh, come on.
That's another podcast altogether, then, mate.
To me, like, look, don't get me wrong. There was a time and place for that and bringing comedy into it, but unfortunately, from that point on, it was hard to come back and make these characters scary again because of what Abbott and Costello did. Yeah. That's not to say the films weren't funny and and people didn't connect with it from that point of view. But yeah, unfortunately, you could never make them dark again. And Tom Cruise is a case in point. But yeah, look, and also the other thing I was going to add too is like, so there was a big hiatus, from the Universal horror stuff, and like nothing really happened until 1979 when Frank Langella played Dracula and tried to make it that kind of dark thing. And what Frank Langella actually did, which might be a bit odd for us to look at it now because he's an old guy, but he brought sex appeal back into playing Dracula again.
Before Twilight.
Before Twilight did,
Sexy
yes.
vampires.
That's it. Yeah, he was all shimmery and glowing. No. But yeah, look, but it was interesting because, and I mentioned that particularly because, as I said, big hiatus until 1979. And then, so that's probably the lasting image that people may have had of Dracula on the big screen before Monster Squad came out. And I'm going to pronounce his surname wrong, but Duncan Rieger played him in the Monster Squad.
Yeah.
And I actually thought he did really well. Actually, I liked his performance. I've got to say, he's very a fine balance of that kind of cold, but villain of the week kind of thing.
Like he was still scary, but he was still a bit tongue in cheek. Yeah,
there's a bit of camp going on with it, which I thought was kind of cool. But there's been some other players that are kind of people might recognise, today as well. Like, we were talking offline again, but Mary Ellen Trainor is the mum in it, and she's also the mum in The Goonies, which I know that people have likened this movie to The Goonies in tone, I guess, rather than style and substance. But it's interesting that there is that kind of connection too. But to me, like you got to mention Tom Noonan, who plays Frankenstein's monster. You were mentioning how he will always be, or did you just say he was always the guy that
Last Action Hero?
Thank you, Last Action Hero. Yeah. So like, and again, modern day audiences may have seen him crop up in things like The Leftovers that was on TV and things like that. But he's one of those people that whose face you just go, oh my god, him, yeah. So there's some kind of great kind of cast members in this film, which really kind of lend weight to how good this film is. So the last thing I probably will mention, Nick, and the reason why people should go and see this, it's not just about the people on the screen too. It's a particular person behind the camera dealing with all the creature effects, and that's Stan Winston. We're talking kind of like like a big player in the special effects kind of creature effect scenery stuff. So you see it already. Straight off the bat with the opening scenes with where Dracula's bat transformation, as an example of that. There's some great kind of there's some great work at play going on in Stan Winston's work.
And apparently, Wolfman's face was modelled on Stan Winston's face too.
Yeah, you said that, which is to me that is awesome. I think that is such
pretty close.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's a really, really, really that's a really kind of cool insight. I should mention, I'd be a bit dumbfounded if people aren't aware of who Stan Winston is. But you just need to look at some of his work. Like, people may know him more from the Terminator and Aliens. He's the guy that was behind creating the Queen in Aliens, the movie. Right through to things like
Terminator,
artificial intelligence, and all this kind of stuff. Great kind of guy in the special effects industry. He's even got he's passed away unfortunately now, but he's got a school that you can an online school that you can log on and do all these cool courses. So I really recommend people go checking out. But that, to me, is one great reason to watch this film, because it's some great kind of effects that are on display in this film. And again, it's that kind of, as I said, real life special effects that really ground this film, which I think we've come back to talking around quite often through our discussions. How it is a very grounding film and feels like it's set in reality, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it does, and that's because the characters feel genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's is a real testament to the film, and that's why I honestly do think it does stand up today. Mate, is there anything else that you'd love to add? I mean, this is a film that, as I said, that resonated so highly for you as a kid. Is there anything, last words you want to say about it before we sign off for the podcast?
No, I think we kind of covered it. Like, for me, it feels a bit unfair to compare it to Goonies for me, because they both came out, obviously it was a couple of years after Goonies.
Yeah.
But as a kid growing up, it just felt like, it didn't even feel like a comedy horror. To me, it just felt like a horror that happened to be funny, and that's kind of how
Yes.
Because I was too young to, without getting too much personal experience, but because I was so young watching it, I hadn't actually seen many of the monster movies it was referencing.
Yes.
But I knew the characters, and I loved the characters. I loved werewolves. I loved vampires. But I didn't have your background of growing up with that knowledge.
No, that's right. Yeah, it's weird.
Lovely seeing them all in one spot.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely, and that to me is one of its selling points. And it's weird, between us, we're probably the best audience to have watched this film. Strangely kind of amalgamate those two kind of areas. Look, I can't repeat enough how actually this feels like a real good feel-good film. It oozes nostalgia through and through, but it as I said, it still, I reckon, stands up today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I will just repeat again the screening of it. It is on at the part of the MonsterFest Travelling Sideshow in Sydney, Saturday, March 10th, 2:30 p.m. Go check it out. And that's about us for the Surgeons of Team discussions on the Monster Squad. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a long time, and it's been a great pleasure sitting down and finally chatting with you on this one, Nick. So thank you so much for playing a part of the role and being my co-host today.
Fun to get nostalgic.
It's always fun to get nostalgic, and what a better place to do it than with the film Monster Squad. Thanks again for people that are tuning in and listening to us. It's been really great to see you guys all tuning in, week out, and we hope to continue to do the same with some more discussions down the track. Until then, keep on listening. Once again, thank you. I'm Paul Farrell and Nick Alford. Until next time, goodbye.
See you later.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.